Arrested for the murder of a 19-year-old woman experiencing homelessness in Boulder. The homicide happened back in July of 2024, and just this week, a suspect, Jimmy West, finally taken into custody. The body of the young woman that he reportedly murdered, Zaria Hardee, was found wrapped in blankets and tarps inside of a bike trailer after she had gone missing. During the investigation, West originally claimed the tarps and trailer were his, though they had been stolen. Police spoke to her boyfriend, who claimed that he sold her to West, likely in exchange for drugs, on the last day that she was alive.
It is entirely unacceptable that this young woman lived and ultimately died on our streets. Something must change. We must have better resources, treatment, and intervention options so our most vulnerable populations are not able to be victimized.
West was charged with first-degree murder. The investigation is still ongoing.
Exactly 200 days after a young woman's body was found in a bike trailer in Boulder, police have made an arrest. Now, for months, investigators have been working to understand what happened and how 19-year-old Zaria Hardee ended up in this situation.
Boulder police arrested 52-year-old Jimmy West, who's being charged with first-degree murder.
We believe the two spent time together within the unhoused community here in Boulder.
Arrest papers say neighbors called police after noticing a bad smell and a bike trailer that hadn't moved for a few days. That's where Hardee was, wrapped inside blankets.
Based on our investigation, we believe she had been there for several days.
Her boyfriend confessed to investigators to, quote, selling Hardee to West, likely with drugs as payment. Rope found within West's camp matched the rope she was bound to the trailer with, and tint material found with her had his DNA on it. West has an extensive criminal history in Colorado, including arson, burglary, and dangerous drug charges in Boulder. Those were from just days after investigators believe Hardee was killed.
Zaria Hardee should be alive today. She was 19 years old. 19. And she was living unhoused in our community. And to me, that is something that should give everyone pause.
It is entirely unacceptable that this young woman lived and ultimately died on our streets.
Tonight's case is another tough one. It's Colorado's case against Jimmy West. Thank you for being here. The plan is to read the Affidavit of Probable Cause all the way through, and then I hope that you'll stick around for some general case discussion after. For those of you who are here now, welcome. Let's get the discussion going in chat. And for those of you who are here on replay, also welcome. Let's keep that discussion going in the comments section. Okay, let's go ahead and get this thing started, shall we? As part of this investigation, I have reviewed all supplemental reports, interviewed suspects and witnesses, and completed extensive evidence processing to include lab testing. On July 14th, 2024, I responded to 1855 Goss Street for an unattended death. I initially learned of the incident from Sergeant Graff and responded as the on-call detective. Upon arrival at the scene, I was briefed by Sergeant Graff, Sergeant Wise, and Officers Lopez and Ferez, where Officer Lopez worked as a crime scene investigator collecting photos. The scene had been secured with yellow crime scene tape, as well as inner perimeter, which was designated with red crime scene tape. The location of the decedent was just east of 1855 Goss Street, approximately 20 feet from the northeast corner of the building, where a small trailer, such as one which would be pulled behind a bicycle, was located. The trailer appeared to be aluminum, silver in color with large white wheels that had sprockets attached to them with protruding axles. It appeared to be homemade, and on the trailer there were a multitude of blankets and various tarp-like materials which fully enclosed what was later determined to be a deceased female. The trailer was facing to the left while facing it, and there was what appeared to be a black bedding comforter laying on the ground near what would be the front of the trailer. On the mound of materials covering the decedent, what appeared to be a canvas covering was torn. I learned from the initial responding officers that the reporting party had moved the black comforter and torn the canvas covering, immediately backing away due to the smell of putrefaction. Due to that, I spoke with the reporting party, Claire, who stated she had been taking her recycling to the complex trash dumpster, which was located to the south of the decedent, with the decedent situated along the path where Claire walked. According to Claire, she noticed a wagon or trailer which was in the same place for 4 or 5 days when she went to take out her recycling. Claire stated she noticed a lot of flies, believing something was decomposing. She stated she became scared and returned to her residence before returning to the trailer with her friend Nick. Nick joined our conversation and stated once he arrived at the trailer, he used a paper towel to pull back the black comforter and tore the thin tan canvas covering the decedent, finding a bunch of maggots, causing them to immediately call the police. I asked Nick about the covering and he described it as being neatly wrapped on top prior to him moving it. I asked Nick and Claire if they had taken any photos of the trailer prior to moving any of the blankets, which they had not. I also asked if they had noticed any smells coming from the area, to which Claire stated she had noticed a bad smell for a couple of days, believing the smell was coming from a nearby dumpster, which may have contained rotting food in the sun. I also asked Nick and Claire if they noticed anything around the trailer which may have stood out to them, which they did not. Claire explained it was not unusual for items to be where the trailer was located, as the unhoused often leave items in the area. This information was also provided by the property manager, Les. I met Les at his apartment where he invited myself and Officer Lopez in to speak. When asked what he recalled, Les stated he recalled seeing the trailer first on what he believed was Wednesday, July 10th, describing it as not uncommon. Les added he left town the next day and returned on July 14th when he started hearing tenants speak about the trailer, which he described as having a lot of flies and smelling. Because it was not unusual for items to be left in that area, Les stated he normally leaves them alone for several days and they move along. Les further explained after he parked his vehicle and approached where the trailer was, he was able to smell it, adding he obtained some rubber gloves a bit later and kind of moved one of the blankets. He indicated he was afraid of what he would find, stating it was pretty obvious something was rotting. Upon arrival of a deputy district attorney, we then waited for a coroner supervisor and discussed how best to preserve the decedent in her current state. It was then decided that the trailer in its entirety would be moved within an oversized body bag to preserve evidence and would only be opened in the autopsy suite. After the decedent was identified as Zaria Hardee, I began investigating those who had seen her or been with her last. I learned from interviews that Zaria was taken to a nearby camp located just north of 1631 17th Street in Boulder, Colorado, which was later identified as belonging to Jimmy West. The straight-line distance from the camp to the location where the decedent was located was approximately 523 feet, or roughly just over 1 city block away. This was confirmed via video surveillance systems, displaying Zaria walking with Kareen eastbound on Canyon Boulevard, nearing 15th Street at 1300 hours on July 10th. Kareen was interviewed and admitted to taking Zaria to the camp of Jimmy West to help Zaria clean herself, and the rest of that statement is redacted. During a later interview with West on July 17, 2024, he stated he last saw Zaria a week and a half ago, adding he had not seen her in some time. During the interview, West was displayed photos of the bike trailer Zaria was found on, and admitted that it was his trailer, but it had been stolen 2 weeks ago. West stated he also rode a yellow Cannondale bicycle, which was also stolen. When asked when the bike was stolen, West stated it's been gone since the same time. West was captured on surveillance systems riding the yellow Cannondale on July 11th at 10:40 a.m. When asked if he recognized any of the blankets on the trailer, he stated his blankets had also been stolen. West did confirm that Zaria was taken to his camp, where he admitted that the two had, quote-unquote, a little bit of sex. West stated he recalled Zaria leaving the camp on that day, July 10th, and she left behind a small purse. West was also able to describe what Zaria was wearing nearly perfectly when she was located deceased, which was a different outfit from what she is seen on video wearing while being escorted to his camp on July 10, 2024. Through this investigation, it was determined that Zaria was last seen alive on July 10th. I also received information from Nickolas Shepherd, Zaria's boyfriend at the time of her death, who confessed to selling Zaria to West, likely accepting drugs as payment on the last day she was seen alive. Given the tumultuous past between Nick and Zaria, which included several domestic violence issues, he was questioned about his location during the time frame of the homicide. Nick provided an alibi which was researched and confirmed as best as possible, given that all those that spoke on his whereabouts were unhoused as well. No other evidence within the investigation tied Nick to the crime. Based on West being the last known person to be with Zaria prior to her death, the unhoused camp, which belonged to West, was searched and several items were collected. Within those items was a cellular phone, which was analyzed but contained no useful information. And in later searches, a rope was located that matched the rope Zaria was bound to the cart with, as well as a piece of tent material, which was an exact fit match, according to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation analysis, which was completed to the larger matching tent material Zaria was concealed in. The tent item, which was cut from the larger portion Zaria was wrapped in, also had the DNA of West on this material when analysis was completed by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Upon completion of the autopsy, the medical examiner wrote her opinion as the following. It is my opinion that Zaria Hardee, a 19-year-old female, died as a result of blunt force head injuries with probable asphyxia. The manner of death, in my opinion, is homicide. It should be noted that at the time of autopsy, Zaria was listed as 4'11" and 87 pounds. Within the autopsy report, information was provided describing the blunt force trauma to the head, which is written below. Lateral left forehead abrasion. Multifocal abraded lacerations of the scalp with surrounding contusion, edema, and abrasion. Scalp and subgaleal tissue hemorrhages and edema. Left temporalis muscle laceration. Skull fractures, including a 1 1/4 by 1 1/8 inch depressed fracture in the left temporal bone, diastatic fracture, and apparent hairline fracture in the left basilar skull. Based upon the above findings and my observations at the postmortem examination, it appeared that Zaria was struck repeatedly in the head, using either a blunt object or a tooled device. Probable asphyxia was also listed within the cause of death, which the medical examiner described as various materials enwrapping the body to include a motorcycle cover around the head secured with strings around the neck and showing a previously cut opening over the mouth and lower face, along with tape on the mouth and lower cheeks. During the search of Jimmy West's camp, several rolls of tape were also located, one of which could not be eliminated as the tape which was found on Zaria's mouth, and the other 2 rolls were eliminated as possible matches. 3 rolls were found, 2 of which were eliminated. Regarding the 3rd roll, and according to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the tapes have similar widths and backing construction. Items 5.2 and 5.3 are presumed to have the same physical, microscopic, and chemical properties based on their previously reported physical fit relationship. West lied about the last time he had seen Zaria. West lied about his bike being stolen, which he stated occurred prior to the homicide. West identified the bike trailer the decedent was bound to as his. 2 witnesses identified the bike trailer as his. West described the clothing Zaria was found deceased in nearly perfectly. The rope Zaria was bound to the cart with was found in West's camp. 1 roll of the tape found in West's camp during the search had similar physical, microscopic, and chemical properties upon analysis as the tape which covered the decedent's mouth and was discovered at autopsy. West denied having a tent, although Zaria was wrapped in a green tent, and a piece of that tent was found in West's camp, which was analyzed and found to have West's DNA on it. The tent piece found in West's camp was a perfect fit match to the larger piece which Zaria was wrapped in. West admitted to having sex with Zaria, and trace DNA was found in her vaginal canal at autopsy. Corrine stated she took Zaria to West on the last day she was seen alive by any witnesses, as she was taking her there to clean her up. Access to the body dump site to the camp contained concealable routes and was a very short distance as listed above. Based upon the above information, I believe there is substantial probable cause to complete the arrest of Jimmy West. West has an extensive criminal history, and the information listed below is from his Colorado driver's license, which was issued in 2025. Okay, if I can remember how all this works again. So that last thing that I circled in the affidavit, shows that Jimmy West, who is the defendant, was listed as 6'3" and 250 pounds. And Zaria Hardee, the 19-year-old victim in this case, was 4'11" and only, I think it was 87 pounds. And he was 52 and she was 19. And something new that I have since last time we talked about this case is the this image of her and her boyfriend. And this is the boyfriend who admits to selling her to Jimmy West, probably for drugs. And as this case kind of continues to unfold, I'm definitely interested in getting police interviews. It took a long time for Jimmy West to be arrested. Zaria Hardee, her body was found on July 14th of 2024. And on July 17th of 2024, Jimmy West was arrested, not for anything that had to do with Zaria's death, but obviously it wasn't a coincidence, right? They arrested him on dangerous drugs charges. And during that time, during the interview, they questioned him about Zaria. I mean, her body had just been found 3 days before he was arrested for the drugs. And her boyfriend, Nickolas Shepherd, he was also arrested, but he was arrested closer to the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. So it was 6 months before an arrest and her murder happened, but they were all over this case, they being, the Boulder Police Department. But what they're dealing with is a group of homeless folks, camp to camp and no one real location, and not always logged into Wi-Fi to track their location. Part of that affidavit, it talked about how they got Jimmy West's cell phone, but there was really nothing of value as it relates to the case in his cell phone. He wasn't one of these jerks that are Googling how to dispose of a body in Boulder, Colorado, these other Google searches that we've seen, like Letitia Stout and James Craig and even Daniel Krug most recently. We don't have the damning Google searches. We don't have his location being tracked because he was basically off the grid. And so here's a map of, right in the middle there is where her body was found. And that was at 1855 Goss Street in Boulder. Now, that is actually an apartment complex. And I don't know if I have that image readily available, but that's okay. It's in the bottom left of your screen now is the apartment complex where, the apartment complex whose dumpster is where Zaria's body was found on that bicycle cart. And then I have a close-up actually of that dumpster. So the apartment complex would be to the left, and then trails and things like that would be off to the right. And apparently just about a block down off of these trails is where Jimmy West's encampment was. And one of the things that bothered me in this affidavit, they referred to it as the camp that belonged to Jimmy West. Well, no, it didn't. He's a homeless person in Boulder, and that is not his land. It is not his property, which I think has, is another thing that's made it somewhat difficult to prosecute this case and make sure that, when they finally did arrest him, that it was going to stick. you've got people going in and out of sites, and all of these people that are involved in this case were on drugs and involved with the police. And Zaria and Nick, her boyfriend, there had been several domestic issues of domestic violence between the two of them, and they just kept getting back together before he ultimately sold her for drugs and never got her back. Allegedly. I mean, he confessed to it in a police interview, but anyhow, so right around here somewhere is where Jimmy West's homeless encampment was. And I did pull some other pictures of Zaria. This is not a very well publicized case at all. And I don't feel like, we've really gotten to know the victim as well as we have in some of the other cases. There aren't as many advocates for her, although her mom, who lived in a different state at the time, her mom has done some interviews, and we'll go over those at a later time. This video is really just meant to cover the probable cause that got him arrested. When we really do the deep dive is the post-trial stuff, when there's a lot more answers. But I did pull a couple of pictures of Zaria. There is Zaria at a much younger age. There's another picture of Zaria. And a frowny face, Zaria. And then once again, there's that picture with the boyfriend who betrayed her. I've even had I had somebody actually leave a comment at one point that said, basically, who cares? They were all on drugs. They were all homeless. One's dead. One's in prison. Who cares? Get them off the streets. We don't care about these people. To which I responded, I do want to know who cares. I want to know who cares. These are still human beings. There's obviously a terrible issue with homelessness, and not just in Colorado. I mean, the issue is everywhere. But I care. I guess that's the simple answer is I care. So back to the affidavit, and I need to check in on you guys over here in chat. And Dan, excuse me. Sorry, I'm feeling a bit under the weather, so there might be some clearing of the throat. And Dandy says Zaria deserves justice. I don't care about her lifestyle or choices, and I agree. And Carolina, I have no answer to the question, how could anyone sell another human being, period? So the charges against Jimmy West, there are two charges. One is first-degree premeditated murder, and the other is a sex trafficking charge. Now, I don't know. Okay, now her boyfriend, Nick, has not been charged in Zaria's death in any way, but he did give an interview to police when he was arrested for something else, and the very next day, police arrested Jimmy West, because in that interview, Nick admitted to selling her to Jimmy for drugs. So she, as a human, was basically in his possession, right? She was, another thing that was incredibly disturbing about that affidavit that we just read. And it takes a couple of read-throughs, to really pick up all of the details that are in it. And I'm going to release a video of just the affidavit without all of the commentary and case discussion, because it's a lot to unpack. And anyhow, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Oh, okay. So the state's witness, I have to assume that her boyfriend, Nickolas Shepherd, is the state's star witness in this case. It is going to be difficult to prosecute because of, the nature of all the whole situation, and the lack of digital forensics and the lack of solid witnesses. But there are ways. And the district attorney in this case, his name is Michael Doherty, and you might have heard his name recently when down in the 12th Judicial District, when they recently indicted Barry Morphew, arresting him for a second time in his wife Suzanne's murder. The district attorney who was prosecuting this new case against Barry Morphew, her name is Ann Kelly, she mentioned Michael Doherty, and he is the district attorney up in Boulder in the 20th Judicial District, and he is helping her also prosecute the case against Barry Morphew. He has been very helpful to her in this new case against Barry Morphew. So I have as much respect for Michael Doherty as I do for Michael Allen, which you guys will remember from Colorado's case against Letitia Stalk. These are some very good district attorneys. Now, I don't know anything about this new district attorney in the Barry Morphew case. So far, that case, since Suzanne went missing, it has been a shit show from then to now, and it's been 5 long years waiting to get justice for Suzanne. So 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be doing the probable cause and general case discussion on that case. 1 week from tonight, we'll be doing the probable cause and general case discussion on Mark Redwine, who was sentenced in 2021. Which, they're going to be a little bit different because, like in this case against Jimmy West, it hasn't been to trial yet. Barry Morphew's case has not been to trial yet. Mark Redwine's case has been to trial, so that's going to change, our discussion a little bit. What else? I'm looking at my notes here. We talked about the difference in age and physical stature, which really upsets me. Yeah, I mean, she was just vulnerable. She was absolutely vulnerable. And I understand that she was legally an adult at 19 years old. And I understand that she probably made lots of choices to do drugs on her own. The penalty for experimenting with dangerous drugs should not be homicide. I just wish she would have had more of a chance to get her life together. On that note, there are several organizations that help people in situations of domestic violence to get away from the abusive partner, but also, it gives them a place to live for 7 or 8 weeks. And you can even renew your stay at the shelter. Nobody can find out where you're at. The security is amazing. It's an undisclosed address. They have counseling. They have peer support. They have career guidance and help. They have, there are so many programs out there. The biggest one for me in Colorado was the Volunteers of America. They have a safe house down in Durango, and I know they've got one in Denver. And then I just saw a YouTube video recently about an organization called Tessa. And Tessa just opened a new safe house in Douglas County. Douglas County, you might remember from the case against Letitia Stalk. That's where they found the particle board with Gannon's DNA, where she had stashed his body before taking off to Florida. Anyhow, there are resources, and I just wish that this young lady would have had, enough grace and enough time and enough resources. to get her out of the situation. And then, maybe she could have turned around and helped others, which does happen. It doesn't, these cases of domestic violence and domestic abuse, they don't always end in death. Sometimes they end in recovery and, a life of helping others, given, what they've been through. So there is hope, so with the state's witness, Nickolas Shepherd, to me, it reminds me, and it sucks, right? Do you guys remember the case against Patrick Frazee up in Woodland Park? The victim in that case was the mother of his child, Kelsey Barrett, and Patrick Frazee had help cleaning up the crime scene, and he reached out to a on again off again girlfriend from Idaho named Crystal Lee, and she came to town, and there are a lot of still, in my opinion, unanswered questions, but we're going to get into that case at another time as well. But when they prosecuted that case, the district attorney came out of the courtroom after they got the guilty verdict, and he went on the news and he said, "We did a deal with the devil today." And in my opinion, that's what we're going to have here with Nickolas Shepherd. And Dee Dee, I am so sorry. Thank you for sharing your personal story, and I'm sorry that it's triggering. I bet it is. And I just want to say I love you so much. And I understand if you need to click off, and if not, just know that you are loved and supported and safe here in this chat. And Dandy says, "I'm friends with Crystal's mother." That's interesting. And Dandy has a personal story, as it comes to children and drug addiction, and I do as well. Thank you for sharing those stories, and I'm glad that you feel safe sharing those stories and not vulnerable in this setting. I'm glad, and I think that what we're doing here is good, and I think that it needs to be talked about because it just keeps happening over and over and over and over, and we have a lot to learn from these things. But yeah, my fear is that Nickolas Shepherd, having sold his girlfriend to what I assume was their dope man, isn't going to have any consequences in her death because he's the state's witness. He probably has some sort of immunity or did some sort of proffer or something along those lines. Otherwise, he would have been arrested already. And maybe, that's maybe that's the way that this case works out. And Jimmy West is no longer homeless ever again, because his new home will be a penitentiary, probably in the state of Colorado. But I hope that Nickolas Shepherd gets his shit together and never, I mean, absolutely whole life change, buddy. Change it all. New playgrounds, new playmates, get sober, get right. I don't know him, obviously, right? I'm glad that he's the state's witness, because there's a very good possibility in this case that they wouldn't have been able to arrest and prosecute Jimmy West had Nickolas Shepherd not come forward. Because this is, this case is different than the other ones where we have all the digital forensic and, and things like that. I mean, I hear you. I hear you, Dandy. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. Law enforcement was definitely all over both of them, and some others as well. The probable cause affidavit mentioned the woman Kareen, and she was one of the group, and I'm sure that there were others as well. These people kind of they're in packs, and and Dandy, I get you, and there's a good possibility that they would not have been able to prosecute this case or arrest Jimmy West for her murder without Nickolas Shepherd. So that's why, I am not a healthy enough person to wish him well. Okay. Thank you for testifying, which I assume that he will. I mean, there's no other explanation. He's going to testify. And while I appreciate that, you are still a piece of shit. And you need a whole life change. And I hope, not for your benefit, I hope for the benefit of any other innocent, vulnerable person that you come across in the future. I hope for their sake that you get your shit together. So, I don't really have many other notes on this case, as far as the probable cause goes. I do have a couple of more images. So the image that's on the screen now, on the left, is, she was wrapped in blankets and tarps, and around her head was a motorcycle cover, which is on the screen now with the lion. That was wrapped around her head, but there were also tarps and tent material. And so on the left is, how it was wrapped with the rope on securing her tiny body to that little bicycle trailer, which is here, right? And then on the right is a piece of tent material that was found in Jimmy West's encampment. Can you even prove that stuff was his? I'm sure that his defense attorneys are going to try to pull all sorts of shit because he's homeless and he doesn't actually, you can't actually prove that's his property. Anyhow, and this is sort of, upsetting to me, so brace yourselves. But this material that was found on the right, that was found at Jimmy West's encampment. Now, when I heard about how Zaria's body was on the bike trailer, I had hoped that, that she was killed, or maybe it was even an accident. I knew that there was blunt force trauma to the head. But when you really get into the affidavit, you learn that the thing that was wrapped around her head, at one point, there was a hole cut where the mouth was. And that leads me to believe that she was actually tortured, for who knows how long or how, and I honestly don't want to know. I don't think I can bear it. But this was not an easy death. She was alive when that hole was cut for her mouth. And who knows what happened to her. We will obviously learn more at trial. The purpose of an affidavit of probable cause is only to give us enough information for the arrest. we will learn so much at trial. And outside of that, I mean, that's really all I want to go over for now, just in this probable cause video. We are going to do one of these probable cause videos every Friday night. So tonight is, Jimmy West on the top. And then every Friday night for the next 8 weeks, we're going to have Mark Redwine, Barry Morphew, Daniel Krug, Letitia Stout, James Craig, Patrick Frazee, and Kimberly Singler. And in every one of these live streams, I'll do the same thing. We'll start out with the introduction that has bits and pieces and clips of news articles. And then I will read the charging documents, whether that is the affidavit of probable cause or the grand jury indictment. And we'll go into a little more detail on the ones that have already gone to trial, but not too much. I want to basically archive these videos as an introduction to the case. Somebody might, just now be learning about the case against Letitia Stout. And there's so much out there on that case. Where do you start, right? So I want each of these videos to serve as a place to start in each of these cases. And so I've put together, playlists and also the website, the crimecurious.com. When you go to the website, I have at the top right cases that are pending trial and cases that are post conviction, for more information on those. But another thing on Jimmy West. So as this case continues to unfold, I have been watching very closely the work of Brooke Stevenson. She is a journalist at the Boulder Reporting Lab, and it is a nonprofit group that is reporting very closely on this case, and they're right there in Boulder County, and it is excellent coverage. So I have links to some of those articles there. And then, of course, what I also wrote about the case. And if you want to look at the affidavit of probable cause yourself, it's there at the bottom of the page. And then I also link to a couple of different videos. So on the left is the full press conference that was given in Boulder when Jimmy West was arrested. And then on the right is the video that we are inside of and getting out of right now. And so I just want to thank you guys for being here. Whether that's now or on the replay as well. And I'm gonna get going for now. So until next Friday night, same time, same place, different case. I hope to see you then. Good night.